1.7 million people have been infected by the disease, with 108,000 deaths around the world. Just 393 recovered thus far. And Europe is the hardest hit continent, with 811,797 cases, with 73,139 deaths, with North America, or the USA, being the hardest hit country with 530,006 cases. And thus far, the US has recorded 20,608 cases. Cameroon is already among the first 6 countries on the continent, with 836 cases, 12 deaths, and 98 recovered. These will be our main focus on the program today. I mean, the coronavirus. We'll look at where we are and whether the challenges are coming with time or increasing with time. The challenges of combating the pandemic, of course. To do that with me on the program this midday, we have quite good panel, I put it that way, beginning with our professor, Professor Wilfred Mbacham, His Royal Highness. So, Professor, well, we'll take this as an academic domain, and so we'll limit ourselves to the academic title. He's the chairman of the, I don't know how to put it, the chairman of, let me put it, the chairman of the graduate program unit for life sciences at the University of Yaoundé 1. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
And we will tap from your know-how today. Okay. We will drink deep into what you people have been doing in the world of science. Okay. We have Eugene Fungwa, a regular face on Press I. You're welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And we have Dr. Eric Tandy, a regular face too, because of the coronavirus pandemic. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
You'll give us certainly where we are and what you people are doing. And we have one of our most respected professors in the country, Professor Sami Beban Chumbu. You're welcome.
It's a great pleasure to be here.
We're inviting him today here as the president of the Cameroon Academy of Sciences, but more as a social scientist and a social communicator. We'll see how we are faring with that, the fight against the disease in the country. Let's begin with what the papers were feeding on so we can be able to situate ourselves. Emmanuel Avemnu.
The continued spread of the coronavirus in Cameroon remains that one news story running through most newspapers this week. Cameroon earmarks isolation centers in COVID-19 response efforts on Cameroon Insider. At a time, rights defender warns against lockdown without relief measures on the Guardian Post. As UBA donates CFA 8.6 billion to 20 African countries to fight COVID-19, with Cameroon receiving 150 million CFA francs on the Star. The Horizon feeds its readers on the COVID-19 fight, expected to gulp 20% of money raised through treasury bonds. Just when controversy over vaccine for COVID-19 is reported on Cameroon Tribune. To the Post, proposal to test COVID-19 vaccine in Africa triggers outrage, with African footballers, civil society activists saying Africans are not guinea pigs. Then, government encourages production of chloroquine on Cameroon Insider as Israel offers life-saving equipment to Cameroon to fight against COVID-19 on the Guardian Post. Just when the Bamenda mayor is on charm offensive on the Horizon, to the Voice, Achumbong puts smiles on Bamenda city traders, grants 2 months rent exemption. Then, the reconstruction priorities of the Northwest and Southwest regions are set straight on Cameroon Tribune, with Port Tassong to lead the operation. To the Horizon, Marshall Plan for Northwest Southwest PM goes for competence. The Guardian Post sees Port Tassong handed tough task to reconstruct Northwest Southwest as 12,000 houses to be rebuilt in Northwest Southwest, the paper reports. But the Horizon sees 350 schools, 115 health centers to be rehabilitated. The Post is worried with its headline, "Amid smoking guns, PM appoints Tassong Njong to head Northwest Southwest reconstruction project." as Cameroon Insider provides details on the Presidential Reconstruction Development Plan for the two regions. The Star simply announces Paul Tassong appointed National Coordinator. The same Paul Tassong who acknowledges arduous task ahead of rebuilding war-torn Anglophone regions on The Voice newspaper. The disclaimer of Secondary Education Minister of Academic Year Adjustment. The 25 families rendered homeless by heavy rains in Adamawa. The border conflict feared as Equatorial Guinea encroaches into Cameroon territory. The assurance of Agriculture Minister on food security in Cameroon. The AFBD 205 billion loan to Cameroon. And the killing of a home teacher in Yaoundé and dumping of her body into a well by her students also form stories reported by the papers this week. Let's now end our press review with this story on the Guardian Post, wherein married women jubilate as husbands are forced to return home early by coronavirus restrictions. According to the Guardian Post, one of them, a certain Linda, fruit vendor in Mile 17 Park, Boya, rejoiced that instead of drinking and returning home late, her husband is now a family man who gets to spend more time with her and the children. A measure she salutes should last long, if not for the prevention of the disease, but for her to have her husband with her. Until I come your way again, this is your Hour with the Press.
Thanks, Emmanuel Avemui, and we come back to the studio and go straight to Professor Mbacham, who is the 2017 winner of the World Academy of Science Prize for promoting science and technology in sub-Saharan Africa. I know you people have been, how do I put it? You've spent sleepless nights, right? And as scientists, this is the time you work most. How would you evaluate the evolution of the virus in Cameroon today?
Well, first, thank you for inviting me to the press hour and for sharing my views. Some of what I'll be sharing would be out of experience, by personal experience, but also an appreciation of what is going on and what the government has been able to do. But since I'm here with the president of the Cameroon Academy of Science, some of what we may be saying would also relate to what members of the Academy have said. I think that the virus is evolving in terms of numbers, and I'm sure that there are people here on the panel who would be able to give you those numbers. But I think I come across with a measure of hope, a message of hope, in the sense that tirelessly behind the scenes, many scientists are working extremely hard to see whether we can bring a solution to this COVID. And the solution not necessarily coming from outside, but one which we have thought it best for our society and which we will be testing. And why not others from around the world can also learn from us, because quite a number of us have been contacted. What is the Cameroon response? And once we've shared that with them and they've asked us what the roadmap towards realizing those are, and we've told them they are offering to come to our assistance in a way of exchange and also of learning.
Okay, that sounds quite interesting and very optimistic. Now, when you are the president of the Cameroon Academy of Science, would you say that almost everything that's in terms of the project which the government has put in place, what you're looking forward to, and so on and so forth, is as a result of the counseling which you're giving the government today?
This pandemic is very critical, and no one has a monopoly of knowledge. It is true that the Cameroon Academy of Sciences, like all academies of sciences over the world, have a responsibility of ensuring that what is known by the scientific world is made available to decision makers, policy makers, so that they can take policies and decisions that are based on knowledge, policies that are informed, because it is believed that whatever decision is based on what we know has a greater chance of being implemented and being successful. So we have done precisely that. We did come together as soon as the problem arose, and we reflected on various aspects of it. And maybe I should first of all say that the Academy of Sciences considers science to be plural and one. That's all of sciences. Because
that's
science
social sciences
means knowledge.
And
that's correct.
Yes, hard sciences.
Yes,
or
what you call pure sciences, social sciences, and humanities.
Okay.
All of knowledge production, knowledge dissemination, knowledge appropriation is one. And interdisciplinary.
Okay.
Because when you take this problem, it is essentially, in one sense, medical, because the virus is medical.
And
but
communicational.
Precisely, the problems related with its implementation have to do with all of social sciences, because man is at the center of it, and so humanity. Communication strategies have been part of what we have proposed to government in relation to...
And that's precisely why you are here. So how would you assess the effectiveness of the measures taken thus far, the 13 measures, including what the Prime Minister said last Thursday, as we move towards next week, tomorrow?
I think that if we go by the numbers, you could say that, as I said a couple of weeks when we were here, that the measures didn't go far enough because it didn't tackle the main thing that you require in any strategy to stop the disease from spreading, that is limiting the opportunities for people to come into contact with the decision. And over a couple of weeks, we saw a spiraling of number of confirmed cases. The Ministry of Public Health attributes that growing number to the fact that they're able to test and isolate people now better than they did at the start of the outbreak in Cameroon. But testing and isolation is not enough, because before you test, people are still within the communities, they're still infecting others. So for testing and isolation to work, you need to test faster than the virus is spreading. I'm not sure we are equipped to keep pace with the speed at which the virus is spreading. However, the more recent measures are beginning to tell us that the government is having a sense that you really need to reduce, even if it's to zero, the opportunities for people contacting the virus. The new rules about obligatory wearing of face masks or mouth and nose masks when you're out in public, as from the beginning of the week, and stuff, that could help limit the possibility that people come in contact with the virus. But if you're still going to have it easy for people to move around, easy for people to sit in bars up to 6 p.m., easy for people to go into markets, it's going to be very difficult to police, that's the first thing, and then it's going to be very difficult to control continued infection. In my view, what we'll need is more stringent closure of the public space to limit the opportunities that people have to come in contact with the disease.
Maybe you want to react to what he's saying, because I saw you.
Well, I think the measures are salutary in the sense that the first 13 measures that were put out and then the 7 other rejoinders are actually trying to tighten those original measures. And I think that what the measures actually say is that we do not spread by contamination, we do not spread by contact. And there are many ways in which that can be done. First, I think a lot of massification of individuals has been reduced considerably. But at the same time, the challenge is that if you bring in total confinement, people may die instead of hunger than die of the virus. And so some amount of restriction in movements has been put in place, and I think that's salutary. At the same time, I also salute this measure of saying everybody must wear a face mask. Why? Because when I don't have and you don't have, that's the ideal condition for spread. But if I have a mask, even if it's the one that's a little bit porous, it will limit the amount of droplets that leave me to you. Now, if I don't have and you have, I would spray it out, but it would also limit the amount that gets into you. But when I have, it limits first the amount of droplets that go out, but at the same time it also limits the amount of droplets that you take in, and so it brings it considerably low.
Exactly.
And it has been modeled and shown that actually every other measure that we take in distancing and avoiding contact reduces also exponentially how many people can effectively get this infection. And by and large, we all at some point would be in contact with this virus. But before you become seriously ill, there's something we call the size of the inoculum. How many viral particles actually get into you and multiply very fast? If it gets in just a little bit, you can mount some amount of immunity. But if a lot of it gets into you, then your immune system runs. % of the time we resolve them without you even knowing. Exactly. Sometimes you complain, oh, I had a little bit of fever and it's gone. Okay. But it's actually a viral infection that you actually got. Okay. Now, some of the times, about 20% of the times, you now may get into complications and then seek hospital attendance and all of that. So basically, 80% of the time we resolve our viral infections. And so we build some amount of immunity which can be protective. And as time goes on, it now also limits the spread, because by the time it gets into me, and if I have already antibodies or some immune protection, then I'll stop it from getting out to you. Okay. And wearing a face mask is limiting it also dramatically, how much I'm able to spread. Okay, that sounds quite interesting there. The scientists are not agreed on a number of issues concerning this coronavirus, and one of them is the wearing of this face mask. Am I right? There are some who said at the beginning that it should be worn by people who are sick. And others said, no, it should be worn by everybody. And that's been tested in Hong Kong, tested in other places, and it's been effective.
Yeah, the issue here is the conflicting information we're having. But based on scientific proven evidence, there are appropriate masks that can prevent a particular percentage of virus that could be inhaled. Just like Prof explained, we have locally made masks, and then we have appropriate like surgical masks, and we start going into details
cotton mask and so on.
P1 masks. These are actually, each mask is designed for a purpose, but mostly in the medical or clinical sciences or in clinical field where we actually use them. But to be more specific here, we have to say there is a degree of prevention of protection
no matter
of
the
droplets, no matter the kind of mask you're wearing.
Now, how should the mask be worn and where, beginning tomorrow?
Yeah, that is very, very, very good, because a lot of people still get confused on how we could put on a mask. It depends on how the mask is designed, because we have many variety of masks. But the end point is that a mask should be one that can cover your nose and your mouth completely, and there should be something that is able to
help you fasten it.
Yes, to fasten it on your head. I know some people complain that we don't have ears, but proportionally there should be something that will be able to hold it.
You don't have ears. What are those hanging on there? Okay, you wanted to say something before I go to Professor Mbacha?
The mix. I think that the mixed messaging that has come out has really not been. Okay. Because the science is not well known. It's because of the political, economic analysis that is going into the policies that different countries and different groups are going to take. And within the global stage, more of geopolitical considerations rather than relying on the science. The basic understanding we have now is that the only way you stop this from spreading is to prevent people from getting contact with the virus in the first place. And we now know that people can, so whatever you do that leads to that point is a good measure. The rest of it is politics and economics of public health.
All right. How should we wear a mask?
Okay, so I have a mask here as a demonstration. And essentially, there are those that you can buy in pharmacies, but there are also those that you can fabricate locally. And I think increasingly, stemming from one of our students who actually did his own mask and has been able to sell it around, he's made 3 layers. Okay. He's put in cotton on the outside, inside, and cotton on the outside. And as inside, the 2 cotton materials put in polypropylene. Okay. And with that, he's not capable of blowing off a flame. And so that's a good mask which prevents droplets from going around.
So anyone who has a mask and you try whether you can blow off a flame...
Yes, then it tells you how porous the mask is. Okay. And the more you double the layers, the better. for you trying to transmit.
Will you not suffocate people?
Well, not quite, because there's a lot of air that goes around, and from the sides and from below, that will allow you still breathe.
Okay.
And effectively, you must cover. It's not a chin or a neck mask.
Okay.
It's not a mouth mask. It's supposed to cover, all these outlets. Exactly.
Your mouth and
so
your
it's
nose.
supposed to actually go, around the nose and around the mouth, so that it actually prevents you in talking. There's sputum droplets that get out of me, and therefore it's probable that I'm spreading. If I sneeze, it even gets it further because I project it further away from me. So you're actually supposed to cover the nose and cover the mouth. You see people who do this.
Exactly.
It's not right.
Okay.
You see people who do that. It's not right. Or some people have become a neck mask.
Exactly.
No, you should actually wear it around you, especially when you're talking to someone else, or you're working, especially in the salons. When you're working over somebody, you're supposed to wear the mask, because anytime that they call you, you're supposed to be answering the call and things like that. Now, how to take the mask off? Because this is the viral contact. You're supposed to actually do that and dispose of it so that you do not touch the surface. Or if you have to rewash, then have your bucket of eau de javel. Once you take it off, you should drop it inside and then wash it, and then put a pressing iron. It will melt off all the stuff, and then you can reuse. And this would be appropriate on what to do.
Thank you so much. Prof wanted to chip in something before.
Yes, I wanted to say that the controversy, which was actually amplified by one of your interlocutors last week between scientists, is really not a controversy of scientists. It had to do with people communicating information. And the problem was mainly that if you wear the mask and you don't actually know how to use it properly, the chances are that you will be touching yourself, and then you actually propagate the disease or pick it up. And therefore, there was some counseling about really slowing down on that.
Okay.
But actually, a mask is indispensable because it does prevent
Now, what about the fabrication? If we were to give advice to people who are fabricating, because everywhere we have local tailors, what would you ask them to do if they are fabricating this mask? Dr. Tandy.
Yeah, just like the prof demonstrated, a mask has certain qualities, in as far as there is a layer that will filter, who has a degree of filtering. Any microorganism that can come in, or dust is important. But let me fabricate a mask. But I think the government has already put in some measures as of the 9th of
yes. Now,
April.
if people want to fabricate a mask because the laboratory or scientific made masks are not available, so what would you advise them to do? Do this, do this, do this to be able to fabricate one. Give them practical
I think the first thing here is to choose a suitable material that has a degree of cotton to permit the circulation of oxygen, first to the individual, and also a degree of prevention, because one of the qualities that it should be able to have of cotton material in the mask. So they have to first of all choose a cloth or a piece of material that has a percentage of cotton. And
what percentage? It's always written on these fabrics that we have.
Percentages are written, but we're not very sure if they do respect. Like
maybe
80%,
double cotton material, or get, let's say, a napkin, put in between, and then you can fabricate one, something like that. We want some practical knowledge. Maybe, Prof, you want to say, yes, Eugene?
No, I think it's good we simplify the thing, and let's start from the Earth to the Moon. The idea is you don't want to have any opportunity for the virus either from an infected person reaching out to an uninfected person, or from on the other way around. So whatever you use to cover your nose should be able to stop that from happening. Prof has just explained that one simple way would be to increase the layering. The more layers you have, the less possibility you have for a virus to go across. And so therefore, a lot of the cloths, anyway, that we have around are cotton
Polyester.
based. No, a lot of, especially the fabric that women use, are mostly cotton based.
And nylon. So, okay. You wanted to say something?
Yes, I think ultimately, even though we can have ready-made fabricated masks, ultimately it's better to get a mask that is standardized. based on the norms.
No, the problem is the mass usage of the mask. So we can't have standardized
Yes,
masks.
I'm coming to that because if you listen to the last 7 commandments added to the 13th, you'll find that it has been indicated that some institutions will produce this mask in commercial, industrial quantities, available and then subsidized. So with that, we think that it's more advantageous in terms of security.
You're talking about a regular situation.
Yeah, because
people would be required to begin wearing masks as from tomorrow.
That's
what do they do?
So they
before they standardize
they can wear the cotton-made mask, but ultimately switch to the standard mask if they are going to be in meetings where there are many people, because that is safer.
You're talking about a meeting, we're talking about the common man.
That's what I'm talking about. When I say meeting, I'm talking about markets.
Okay.
Going to the market.
Okay, yeah.
Well, I think while we wait for those measures for the mass production, I think there are things that we can do. First thing is to have more than just 2 layers. Is to have the 3-layer, and there's a polypropylene. It's a kind of material. If you ask from the stores, they would show you what is polypropylene, and then you can effectively include that. You would have noticed that most people, there was a social media posting in which somebody got the socks, cut it, and then inside the socks took tissue paper and fitted it and wasn't able to blow the flame. He was still able to breathe. So basically, there are some of these practical measures while we wait for the mass production of these things to happen. First of all, government gave out these measures. It's still a lot of bureaucracy to disburse the money, for it to start to happen. So while we wait for that to happen, we would start fabricating our own, because it's a physical barrier. That's all you're looking for. It's a physical barrier. And so once you have the physical barrier, it's preventing you, and use it appropriately, and I think that will do. What I advised that student, my student, to do was that in addition, you can spray the front with Dettol, you can spray the front with eucalyptus oil, you can spray the front with cypress oil, and that would also in a way limit the things. Now the question was, doesn't it be this too much of smell for you? No, you can do actually a certain percentage of the solution. Even when you wash it in eau de javel, there's some residual amount of eau de javel that's still lingering on the cloth. It's good. Because anything that lands on it, it will not, have the chances of surviving. So you reduce those chances, and I think this physical barrier will start doing the precautionary measures while waiting for
the standard mask. All right, I'd like us to go to our machines and get this report on what's happening within our community on this coronavirus.
Coronavirus or not, the streets must remain clean and the lawns more to keep the city neat.
We work 6 out of 7 days from 6 a.m., then take a break from 9 to 10 a.m. and continue until 1 p.m. Wherever you go, you will find us working. We are trying to keep the town clean because of the disease out there. Everywhere has to be clean, especially where people enter to pay bills.
Neither is staying at home a question of choice for these bakery workers, even in moments when going out means risking their lives.
You can't live without food. Even during war, we are supposed to be open because we produce bread. I think 100% of Cameroonians eat bread. We have to brave this situation, take the necessary measures of protection to serve the community.
Laundry services too remain indispensable, as some fabric can't be hand-washed at home.
We must work because people still come with dress. Some people are going to work, so we have to wash dresses.
In spite of the status quo, this car wash is available for its customers, with the workers conscious as much as these guards that while they must serve at all cost, they are bound to check the spread of COVID-19.
Okay. Prof, has research been able to know all about coronavirus now?
Well, certainly not. And I think if all that has to be known about corona, it's a 10,000-meter hill. We're still 1 meter away uphill. And what that says is that almost every day there's something new that we're learning. From the very time when corona started to now, there's so much of information that has been dispensed. The question is not even about what we know. It's about how we put it into practice. For example, corona is not the first time it's appearing. It had appeared before 17 years ago in China. There were certain measures they took.
The same China?
Yes, there were certain measures they took to try to limit it, and they did. It wasn't as widespread as it was. The question is, when it started this time and they recognized that this was the same corona, why didn't those measures kick into place? Why were other governments a little bit hesitant about, trying to implement those measures? So besides that, the biology is now known. From the time that China began to use an anti-malaria, chloroquine, to treat its cases, and then announced to the world that chloroquine has been helpful. Other people have tried it in other places. They've tried it in France. They've tried it in Russia. In Russia, they didn't use chloroquine. They used mefloquine. Now, it so happens that also in the scientific community, as far down south as in Australia, they found out that ivermectin in the test tube is also happening against the virus. They've seen other antivirals that are also killing the virus in the test tube. So these are signs that, we will be able to contain this thing. So it's still an evolving science.
Okay. Now, when you say what you say, it tickles my mind to this question. You know all about the disease, but what is peculiar about the virus that no medicine thus far has been able to target it, but you use soap, you use sanitizers, and you kill the virus.
Okay. So essentially, the virus is an envelope virus. So it is made up of the outer shell is like the human cells. And so it's a bilipid membrane. And who says lipids and says soap, the two don't agree. You know that when you use soap on oil, it dissolves. And so basically, when they realized that this was an RNA envelope virus, they now advise that people should use soap. Now, in using soap normally would break down this membrane, and once the rest of the material is sent to the outside, then the virus cannot survive again. Now, alcohol would also do the same, and while that is happening, scientists are busy, finding out what could effectively stop the virus from replicating, and this is where things have become very interesting. Now, there's been a lot of repurposing of old drugs like chloroquine, like mefloquine, into using to find out exactly whether this virus replication can be stopped. Yes.
Yes.
And the answer is yes.
Okay. Now, when you say what you say, you smile, and I ask myself this question. The queens were used for malaria treatment.
Yes.
Can you link coronavirus to malaria?
No. The two are not similar, except that maybe in terms of the multiplication of its genetic material, there could be similarities. And therefore, by use of chloroquine on one and chloroquine on the other, they're just trying to stop things that are basically similar in their ways, in the ways in which they act.
Okay.
But what's interesting, basically, is that while that is happening in the Western world, we have a number of things within us, around us, we can draw from that knowledge and be able to use things that can help us fight while we wait for the tailored and well-balanced solutions to happen. There are two things that must be taken note of. The first is that we also have plants around us that are anti-malarial, that are antimicrobial, that are antioxidants, which can be used. And while these are not proven, I don't stop myself from drinking those things because some of them have been made into tea. And therefore, I can take those things, and in the hope that, if the virus gets into me, it will not multiply. They have shown in the United States that if you add zinc to the mixture of what they do, the chloroquine and the other antimalarials opens up the pores, and the zinc gets in and then stops viral replication. Right. If I have foods that are rich in zinc and vitamin C, I will take those foods now because I have no other alternative. And if it helps me, it helps me. If I can say it to whoever it can or whomever I can, I will say the same thing so that it can help them.
I'll come to you shortly. Let you tell the Cameroonian public what you're taking and what they can take. Now, there's so much talk about 5G technology and this coronavirus. And people say that the coronavirus has come as a result of radioactive rays or waves or whatever that the 5G technology has brought about.
You need to remember that the 5G has been controversial even before the outbreak. Several years ago, it started off as a trade battle between the US and China. They have been very conservative communities that fear about the potential that 5G brings in terms of artificial intelligence, that are we moving into a step in human evolution where the machine will take over the world. So 5G has not ever been a very popular technology to start with, in spite of the potential, also positive, that it has in speeding the way we communicate, in making science possible, in making a lot of things like non-assisted driving possible. All of that is positive. But the big fear, I think, is more of an ethical one, where people are saying, what potential does it have in terms of the way we are able to use this technology as human? And so COVID-19 appears to have fed into that narrative and helped the anti-5G movement to find a connection. One of the things that you do is, I have a little experience with activism, is that you demonize something to be able to push it out of society. So one of the things that is happening is the demonization of 5G technology, and COVID-19 is helping that process. I don't think, I've not read any scientific connection between 5G and COVID-19, even though you cannot rule
a lot of literature is circulating.
Health risks.
Yes.
Scientific literature, not, I'm not talking about all the blogs that we're reading. I'm talking about peer-reviewed scientific literature. I'm not saying
But there are demonstrations that computers, especially your laptops, have some effect on the human body. And the 5G technology has a higher, how do I call it, a higher performance rate. How would you throw away hypotheses like that one when the computer has effect on the human body, Doctor?
Yeah, I think when we come to human communication with electronics and waves, we have to take it with a second thought, because there is what we call mutation with time and environmental changes. And we don't have to neglect whatever response, especially with the changing time of our body chemistry based on the environment. So whatever situation that a human being, especially human being, with communication with electronic devices, we have to be very careful, because some of these changes can lead to health effects and consequences that might propagate into something else, and during our day-to-day activity it might lead to something. So I think the best advice here is for us to live healthy and continue to live healthy with hope. We have to limit the way we use some of these devices, especially during our resting times. When I say resting time, these are moments where we go to bed. We have to make sure our bedrooms should be off from electronic devices so that we can achieve a good basal metabolic rate during the nighttime.
That's interesting, Prof.
Yes.
Yes, I'll come to you.
Yes, I think we have, since the birth of science, learned to live with some amount of radiation that's generated from all of this. I think the problem that has arisen, which has been in the media for a long time, as Mr. Ndifongwa says, has been the quantity of radiation that's generated by the fifth generation technology. With respect to third generation, which is what is more popular, and the fourth generation, it is so enormous. And you know that radiation would kill cells. They become degenerate, and that means that life expectancy of mankind will be reduced. So
may be reduced.
Will be reduced, really, if we allow that to go on without looking at some countermeasures.
Yeah, from the way you speak, you're already on the other side.
No, because the literature is so obvious. It's very dangerous, but it also has such enormous advantages that you begin to ask yourself: should we allow that go when we can actually break into new horizons in science by using that technology? So it's a big dilemma, and I don't think we have the answer. But with respect to coronavirus, there's no cause-effect relationship between 5G technology and the impact on the virus for now.
Okay,
but it is one of the speculations, one of the hypotheses that is being verified by scientists.
Okay. Professor Mbacham, you wanted to chip in something. Oh, no, let me begin from Eugene. You wanted to react before
I wanted to say that what is interesting is that this conversation is healthy. It's a good thing that this, in spite of the fact that we don't have all of the information,
empirical facts,
we need to be definite in what we say. But the conversation is interesting because a lot of technology has been introduced. A lot of breakthroughs have come without this conversation, this ethical conversation happening. In our climate change discussion, we take the example of what the fuels did, the fossil fuels did. It was a breakthrough, it was huge. It advanced human development, it made everything possible, but now see what is happening to the world. This conversation didn't happen at the outset of the Industrial Revolution. It's good that at the outset of the new revolution, because I believe that the world is transitioning into a new future, it's interesting that this conversation is happening so that early enough we can be able to take precautionary measures to ensure that as much as we get the benefits out of it, we are aware of the potential risks that come with it and put in place strategies to minimize their impacts on human
on the human body. Now, Prof, before you chip in your own contribution or your own viewpoint on the G5 technology, how would you explain the fact that you treat symptoms of a coronavirus and somebody is cured?
Okay, I think first you should understand that, as I said, 80% of the time when we get a viral infection, we resolve it without even realize that we've resolved it.
Okay.
And therefore, sometimes when you get a viral infection and you get all the symptoms, you try to treat the symptoms and the body is continuously fighting, you know, to make sure that your body gets rid of this infection. And so sometimes it happens that, you know, by dealing with the symptoms, you know, you let the patient therefore get a natural recovery, which is good in a way. And late Professor Nomangu kept on saying that it's even a good thing to have a fever. When you have a fever, don't try to suppress it, because it's your body's reaction to, you know, foreign particles, and therefore it's building up an immune system, it's building up on itself to fight that particular infection. And it brought me to the understanding that in our local communities, we used to use heat as a way of therapy.
Yes.
You know, if you're ill with any kind of fever,
even
viral
today, use it.
Yeah, you cover yourself with this blanket and you boil, you know, a hot grass stew underneath, and you inhale this and it covers you up, because your body is rising to that limit where it is producing things that are going to fight your natural infection. Now, why do we always try to bring down the fevers, the temperatures when you get a fever? It's because when it gets to a certain level, it has also effects on the neurons. And so you start to, you know, behave way. And therefore, there's every reason why you want to put that on the limit. But, you know, heat, especially when it's brought externally in this hot blanket fermentation, it's a way of generating your heat shock proteins to start to fight the infection for you.
Oh, that's great.
If I may go back to the 5G.
Yes.
Now, the
briefly,
5G, briefly.
Because we'll come back on that some other day.
First, let me say that the cell can get in toxins in 3 ways. When you have a lot of stress, the cell is greatly intoxicated when you're stressed up. Number 2 is that you can take in, your cells can be intoxicated through xenobiotics. So all the chemicals and things that we drink, we smoke, we do, you know, the cell can become intoxicated. The third aspect of cellular intoxication is through excessive radiation. And we have seen this happen. When they originally announced in Sweden that high tension cables were causing leukemia in children, everybody said, no, that cannot be true. Then it now happens that it has been proven beyond reasonable doubt, scientifically, as Eugene would want it, that if you hold the phone to your left side of the ear, after a certain time you start to develop cancer of the brain on that side of the head. Women who always put it in their breast as a way of keeping their phones, after a while you see them start developing breast cancer, because then that's where the phone is. So radiation, excessive radiation, has been known to alter cells. Now, in as much as they haven't made the connection, I have not seen the scientific proof where 5G is connected to corona. However, 5G radiation on cells causes the cells to shit out.
Yes.
I should use that word, shit out, something they call exosomes, which look exactly like corona. But it's not corona.
Okay.
It looks exactly like corona. So we have the possibility of getting into this new area of biology called quantum biology, to start to find out if these radiations have specific effects. And are there ways in which we can block them? Yes, we can block these radiations. When the mobile phone was made, it wasn't made for you to happen to use it inside a building. It was meant for you to use it on the road. That's why it was called mobile.
Okay.
Now, we've been turning to use it inside. We sleep on it as pillows. We use it everywhere except on the road. So basically, there are ways in which, and there are certain places where you can't get Wi-Fi connection in a building. They have sealed the building with certain LED panels, so you can't get connection. They must give you an antenna inside the building for you to get the connection directly from there. So it's getting to that. The more we know about these technologies, the more we will be able to look for blocks to be able to prevent human health.
We'll come to that some other day. But let's focus on what is dealing with us now, coronavirus. Now, the government has recommended that we should produce hydrochloroquine, or they call it hydroxychloroquine, right?
Yes.
Have you tested that in Cameroon also?
Well, let me start by saying that chloroquine is an age-old drug.
Yes.
It has been used for a long time.
Why did you stop it in Cameroon for some time?
Well, because the Plasmodium falciparum parasite was becoming resistant, or had become resistant. So using chloroquine, the parasite was not going away, and then we were going to degenerate into very complicated malaria.
Okay.
So they stopped it as a monotherapy and said that, hey, look, keep this aside and use other things that are combination, so that by the time one drug attacks one side of the parasite, another drug will attack the other side, and so together the parasite will die.
That sounds
now,
interesting.
chloroquine was kept aside, and we have been able to test the mutations due to which offer this chloroquine resistance, and show that it's becoming sensitive again.
Okay.
So we've been able to follow, and we just have a manuscript which we're submitted last Friday, which shows that it's becoming more sensitive now again to chloroquine. So at some point we could repurpose chloroquine for use again as part of therapy.
Okay.
Now with this chloroquine saga, it so happens that the repurposing of drugs is not a new thing. Sometimes you use an old drug to cure a new infection. Okay. And in this situation, China gave us the lead. That, hey, we've used chloroquine and it's looking effective. France say, hey, we're testing. United States, hey, we're testing. And then the FDA authorized it as an experimental drug under its experimental use authorization program. And that has allowed the clinical testing to start. We can also try to use it here, and then by reason of the people who get well from the infection, we'll be able to quantify what it is that is happening. Now, why is there some confusion in the literature and the mass media? You hear people say, oh, don't use it yet, this is not authorized, this is not authorized. If it is used as an experimental drug, then we can see exactly on the evolution. Remember, we do not know the dosing of chloroquine or hydroxychloroquine to effect a cure that is long-lasting. Okay. And therefore, we have to take precautions on exactly intoxicating the public again, and then making them go down with another kind of side effects which we originally was not our intention.
Yes, and there are some people who say chloroquine usually causes some heart cardiac problems to some patients, and if you give such treatment, would you minimize the side effect and treat the coronavirus first, or how do you do it?
Well, it's difficult for us to say, and I'm not a cardiologist, but from what I've read is that in as much as you get this, your body is trying to fight the corona, and suddenly it's trying to fight it with a little punch, and then suddenly the punch is so hard that it's a Muhammad Ali kind of punch and you go to the floor. This is what they call the cytokine storm. So the body first starts to put up an immune response, and instead of putting it gently, it just comes with a rush, and this is what happens. And so they now explain that there's a jump between the way that the virus enters the lung cells and the way that, or the receptors on the lung cells that take in the virus are also abundant in the heart muscles.
Okay.
And therefore it goes that way as well.
Yes.
And so you get some kind of inflammation.
We'll be having Elvis shortly.
Okay.
I'll come back to you for the curve, coronavirus infection curve and the advice. But Eugene, when you listen to him and you see what's happening, what is your fear?
My biggest fear has been that the public is overwhelmed with information. And when you're overwhelmed with information and you don't have the capacity to synthesize that information, the risk of you putting yourself in harm's way are very high. So I think the solution to that is that both the scientific and the policy community needs to simplify the information and provide the kind of information that the public needs. The public doesn't really need to understand, like I said the last time, whether chloroquine treats or not. The information the public needs to know is how you contract the disease and what you need to do when you have symptoms, or when you think you have been in contact with someone that you need. That's the kind of information that the public needs.
We'll come to Prof shortly about the communication concerning the disease. Take care. What have people been saying online?
Yes, Ibrahim Usman says it is true that COVID-19 started in China, but China is not responsible for the virus outbreak. It is brought by God to humans due to their sins, and let's give an upper hand to prayers in churches and mosques. Dinga Theodore says the same thing. Sunshine Favor says, which is seek the face of God. Cho Waters Anye says, I think we are at a delicate case where there's a need for obligatory use of masks and limit the spread of the pandemic. He adds that there are challenges, especially when our economy has 80% of its population who depend on the informal sector. Hence, accompanying measures are necessary. Mary Kilachin says the virus is dangerous and would have
that's a regular name
entered the country if Cameroonians took quick measures and the actions to stop the foreigners from entering the country and blocking the airports would have been best. And she's
many of them were Cameroonians anyway.
Talking of prayers, and the challenges of the virus would evolve with time as people keep entering. And this might be affecting the states and affecting the stability of citizens.
Okay. We have 5 more minutes to the end of the program. You have 1 minute each. Our communication strategy, what do we do? Prof.
Well, I think communication is the heart of the matter as far as the majority of the population is concerned. They're not concerned about what this disease is all about. I think we spent a lot of time talking about that. It's very useful. But we may need another program just to talk about how do we get the knowledge that we have, the information that we have, communicated to the entire population so that they can understand, appropriate this information, make use of it so that they can now ensure that they do what we expect them to do. Because look at it, Joe. We have been saying that a number of things should be done. And when you go around to make an evaluation of what people actually do, you find that a lot of people are not following those instructions. Why? What is it about communication and human nature?
It means our communication is not...
Yes, communication, and we needed to take into consideration a number of things.
All right.
Sensitization is just the onset of information that will trigger a response so that people will have to change their attitudes and change their behaviors, change their minds, and change the mindset, which is embedded with a number of things.
Okay. We'll come back on that. So, Dr. Tandy?
Yeah, I think the population needs to be very, very vigilant at this time because we already mentioned a series of things, and even with regards to some medications that have been announced, even the hydrozil, chloroquine, but they should know that that is for treatment. It is for treatment, yes, for treatment, and
prescribed.
Yes, and they should approach the most competent health facility. They shouldn't do auto medication at home because we've noticed and seen people rushing to pharmacies and buying certain drugs and even going to some clandestine market to get hydroxychloroquine. They have to be very careful.
Okay.
Like it might create more health effects and consequences to them.
Okay.
So they should simply follow the instructions that the government is prescribing, and even the production on whatever thing, and avoid the communication of fake news that we see circulating every day.
Okay, the role of the media here, the challenge?
The role of the media, I think, would be to fish out. We're planning a webinar on fact-checking COVID-19 to be able to enable the media be able to sort wrong information and correct that information before giving it out to the public.
Okay.
But one of the things I wanted to say about communication is that there is evidence that a change of attitude usually doesn't always lead to a change in practice, because the skip between attitude and practice has a lot of things in between that are infrastructural.
All right.
So if you can tell the people all you want to know, if they don't have access to hand sanitizers, to face masks, if you don't have a means of enforcing whatever regulations you've taken, it will not work.
Okay. What tea should they take and what should they not take? Locally made.
Well, I do take moringa, I take fever grass, I take also cloves, I do take a substance called kenkeliba, and I take the baobab powder, and it depends on the time of day. If it's towards the night time, I don't take anything vitamin C because it will keep me awake throughout the night. I take it more in the morning, and in the evening I take those other things that...
Now, what of the foods?
In terms of foods, there are a number of foods that are very, very healthy, things like cauliflower, broccoli, parsley, cabbages, citrus fruits, because those are rich in vitamin C and at the same time also rich in zinc. And they've shown that zinc has some effects on the virus as foods. Okay. But there is a particular plant that's totally unknown, but it's been shown in the East to fight against inflammation and fight against myocarditis, which is caused by that. And in my local language, I know the name. It's called Mumbanga. And I don't want to start giving the scientific name now so that the forest in my place is not cut down entirely for people drinking out of this or elsewhere in the country. But it grows in Cameroon, and it's been shown in the East to fight against diseases that cause inflammation and myocarditis.
All right. Thank you so much, Prof, for coming. We still have time to talk about this and, in fact, the communication and this problem about radiation. Stay with CRTV if you can. Tam Tam Weekend is following shortly on our main channel, and news will follow here on CRTV News.